Hey guys, tonight we are diving deep into one of the most serene and disciplined routines in history. We're trading your frantic notifications and endless scrolling for the slow, unchanging, meditative daily schedule of a Buddhist monk in Tang Dynasty, China. Imagine a life dictated not by a clock, but by the sun, the drum, and the deep breath. It's a world of profound tranquility, but let's be honest, your screen-minded addled brain might find the first few hours challenging. There's no morning coffee, and the only feed you'll be checking is the one for the monastery's carp. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your support means the world, and while you're at it, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop your city and the current time in the comments below. It's always a quiet thrill to see how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The world you know is gone. There is only darkness, that deep, silent, and ancient blackness that your modern eyes are completely unprepared for. It's not the gray minus orange glow of a city at night. It's a profound, ink minus like void, cushioned by an even more profound silence. You are asleep, not in a soft bed, but on a hard wooden plank. A thin, woven rush mat, doing very little to soften the reality of the unforgiving wood beneath you. A single coarse blanket covers you, smelling faintly of sun minus dried grass and incense. Then, it comes. Clack minus clack. Clack. The sound is sharp, dry, and utterly commanding. It's not an alarm clock's beep or a gentle chime. It's the sound of a hardwood mallet striking a dense block of wood. A sound designed to pierce through the thickest blanket of sleep. It echoes down the long, dark corridor outside your small, Spartan cell. This is the Xuanzang ban, the waking board. It is 4 a.m. Your day has begun. There is no negotiation, no rolling over, no 5 more minutes. Your body, still tethered to a deepened dreamless sleep, learns the response through pure repetition. You sit up. The movement is stiff, and the cold air of the pre-dawn mountain monastery immediately bites at your bare arms and face. You can feel the chill seep from the packed earth floor right through your thin mat. Outside your paper window door, you hear the soft, rhythmic footsteps of the monk danced with morning wake up calls. His clack clack receding down the hallway as he moves on to the next row of cells. This precise, disciplined awakening is a cornerstone of monastic life, a practice known for centuries. The idea is to begin your day in mindfulness before the world, and even your own mind has had a chance to clutter itself with stray thoughts and anxieties. You wake not to chaos, but to a singular, focused purpose. But here's a little detail. We often miss the waking instrument wasn't always a simple, flat board. Many monasteries, especially those with a bit more funding, used a Muyu, or wooden fish. This was a carved, stylized fish, hollowed out to create a unique, resonant tone when struck. Why a fish? Because fish, it was believed, never close their eyes. They are a constant symbol of wakefulness, of the diligence required to pursue enlightenment. So, as you sit on the edge of your hard bed in the absolute dark, the sound pulling you into the day isn't just an alarm. It's a piece of Buddhist iconography, a reminder to be ever vigilant, ever aware. You are being awakened by a piece of philosophy. Still, the exact nature of this wake, up call, is something historians and scholars of Buddhism continue to explore. While texts clearly mention the use of a wooden board or fish, the specific rituals and sounds could vary dramatically from one monastery to the next. Some accounts suggest a complex series of strikes, a kind of monastic Morse code to signal not just the time to wake, but the specific chant that would begin the day. Was the sound meant to be jarring to shock the mind into focus? Or was it a more rounded, resonant tone meant to ease the community into a meditative state? The truth is likely a spectrum of practices, dependent on the sect of Buddhism, the wealth of the monastery, and the personal style of the abbot in charge. The sound that just woke you up in this specific temple, on this specific mountain, is unique to this time and place. You swing your legs off the plank bed, your bare feet meeting the shockingly cold floor. There's a moment of hesitation, a deep, primal urge to crawl back under the thin blanket. But you don't. All around you, in the dust another identical cells in this wing, you hear the soft rustle of movement, a quiet cough here, the soft swish of fabric there. You are a single, silent drop of water in a river that is just beginning to stir. The day's first test of discipline has been passed. You are awake, and the cold is just getting started. The cold that was just beginning to bite is now a constant, unwelcome companion. You slide your cell door open, a simple wooden frame with stretched paper that rattles softly unstep into the corridor. It's still profoundly dark, but now the void is punctuated by the shuffling sounds of your fellow monks. No one speaks. There's a shared, unspoken understanding that this time is for inner quiet. You join the slow, silent procession of dark figures moving towards the central courtyard, your bare feet learning to ignore the sharp chill of the stone walkway. The air is so cold you can see your breath, a small, fleeting cloud in the darkness. You arrive at the washing area, an open-minded air pavilion at the edge of the courtyard. A large stone basin, worn smooth by centuries of use, is filled to the brim with water drawn from the deep mountain well just moments before you arrived. It's so cold it seems to absorb the faint light from the single swaying lantern hanging from a wooden beam above. You can see the faint, ghostly reflections of the other monks as they cup water in their hands and bring it to their faces. There is no idle chatter, no groaning about the cold, only the rhythmic sounds of splashing water and the sharp, collective intake of breath as the icy liquid makes contact with warm skin. It's your turn. You pick up a simple wooden ladle, dip it into the basin, and the cold radiates up the handle into your hand. You take a breath, then you pour. The shock is absolute. It's a jolt that travels from your face, down your spine, and to the tips of your toes. It's not just cleansing. It's a violent awakening, a physical sermon on the nature of reality. There is no comfort here. There is only the bracing, undeniable truth of the water, the stone, and the cold. You use a small, rough-minded spun cloth to dry your face and hands, the fabric feeling more like fine-minded grained sandpaper than a towel. This isn't a spa. This is the deliberate stripping away of comfort, the day's first lesson in enduring hardship without complaint. Back in the solitude of your cell, shivering slightly, you turn to your clothes. Laid out on your sleeping plank is your uniform, your identity, the monk's robe. First, the undergarments, a simple pair of loose fitting trousers and a thin tunic, likely made of undyed hemp or a coarse cotton. They are purely functional, designed for modesty and a bit of protection from the main robe's roughness. Then comes the robe itself, the gyosha. You lift it, and the weight is familiar, reassuring. It's not a single garment, but a masterpiece of deliberate humility. The color is a dull, earthy ochre, a shade sometimes called a forbidden color in the secular world, but here it's known as a Kāṣāya color, a soiled or impure color, intentionally chosen to quell any sense of vanity. This is the robe of a person who has renounced worldly aesthetics. Here's a fascinating detail. You feel in your hands every morning the robe is not made of a single, luxurious bolt of cloth. It is a patchwork of smaller, rectangular scraps, all meticulously stitched together. This wasn't originally a sign of poverty, but a profound philosophical statement. Early Buddhist monks were instructed to make their robes from discarded cloths, scraps found in refuse piles or at cremation grounds. By the Tang Dynasty, this practice evolved into a symbolic one. New cloth would be ceremonial cut into pieces and then sewn back together, creating a rag robe by design. As you run your fingers over the seams, you're touching a physical manifestation of detachment from material value. Your robe is a map of renunciation, The exact daily configuration of these robes, however, is a subject of ongoing academic discussion. The grand, formal robes seen in statues and paintings, with their intricate patterns of 7 or even 9 vertical strips, were likely reserved for important ceremonies or lectures. But what did a monk wear for daily chores like sweeping or gardening? Historians debate whether a simpler 5- strip robe was the daily standard, or if monks wore an even more basic work garment, saving the formal gyasha for sacred duties. The rules set down in ancient texts often describe an ideal, but the practical reality of daily life in a mountain monastery might have been quite different. What you are putting on now is likely a sturdy, practical, 5- strip version, sacred enough for the prayer hall, but durable enough for the day ahead. You wrap the fabric around your body in a practiced sequence of movements, the folds falling into place from memory. The left shoulder is covered, the right is exposed, a tradition with multiple, debated meanings. Perhaps for ease of movement, or as a sign of respect, the robe settles on you, a familiar weight, a second skin. It is not clothing in the way you once knew it. It's a tool, a reminder, and a declaration. You are now dressed not as an individual, but as a member of the Sangha, the community, fully awake, cleansed by the cold. Then draped in humility, you are ready. The great bell of the main hall has not yet rung, but your own preparations are complete. The day's true work is about to begin. You slide your cell door shut, the sound a soft thud in the quiet corridor. Stepping back out onto the stone path, you find the darkness is beginning to soften at the edges. A faint, almost imperceptible line of deep indigo is appearing above the sharp black silhouette of the eastern mountains. The pre-dawn is here. You join the now-formed river of silent, ochre-robed figures, all moving with a shared, unhurried purpose towards the heart of the monastery, the great hall, the Dezhong Baodayan. As you approach, the building looms out of the dimness, its grand, sweeping roof with upturned eaves looking like a massive bird poised to take flight. The air here is thick with the scent of old sandalwood and the cool, damp smell of stone. You slip off your simple cloth shoes at the entrance, adding them to the neat rows already lining the wooden steps. Your bare feet meet the polished wooden floor of the hall, worn smooth by generations of stockinged feet. The floor is cool but not as shockingly cold as the stone outside. Inside, the hall is a cavern of shadows and light. Dozens of candles and small oil lamps have been lit on the main altar, their flames dancing and casting a warm, flickering glow that barely reaches the towering, carved ceiling high above. The light catches the serene, gilded face of the central Buddha statue, which seems to float in the vast darkness, its expression one of timeless, unwavering compassion. The air hums with a low, resonant energy, the collective quiet anticipation of 100 monks. You find your designated place. It's not a chair or a pew, but a simple, round-woven cushion, a putuan, or zie baton. You settle onto it, folding your legs into a half-lotus position, a posture you've trained your body to hold for hours. You adjust your robe, ensuring it drapes correctly, then place your hands in your lap, thumbs up, thumbs lightly touching, all around you. The same actions are being repeated in near-perfect synchrony. The rustling of fabric subsides, and a profound, collective stillness descends upon the hall. Then, the sound of the great bronze bell from the bell tower rolls through the hall. It's a deep, soul-shaking tone that seems to vibrate not just in your ears, but in your very bones. It is the official start of the day's rituals. Then, a single voice rises from the front of the hall, the abbot. His voice is not loud, but it is clear and steady, and it carries effortlessly to every corner. He begins the morning chant, a sutra you have recited so many times that the words feel more like a part of your own breath than a memorized text. Almost immediately, your voice joins his, along with 100 others. The sound is transformative. It's not a choir singing in harmony. but a unified, monotonous, yet deeply melodic drone. It's the sound of the ocean. A low, powerful hum that fills the vast space, seeming to make the very air dance with vibration. You chant the Sanskrit and Chinese syllables, focusing on the shape of the words in your mouth, the vibration in your chest, the flow of your breath. The meaning of the words is secondary to the act of chanting itself. This is not an intellectual exercise. It is a physical and spiritual one. Your mind, which might have started to wander to the cold, to the stiffness in your back, is pulled back, anchored by the rhythmic sound. Here's a small, curious detail about this ritual. While you are chanting from memory, there would have been cheat sheets in many monasteries. Large stone nests D-less were engraved with the most important sutras. Monks, especially novices, could study these. But more importantly, it was a way of preserving the sacred texts in a permanent, fireproof, and incorporate form. So while your daily practice is one of memory and recitation, you are surrounded by the silent, stony presence of the words you are speaking, carved to last for millennia. The chanting continues, seemingly without end. The sutras are long, the recitations repetitive. This is by design. The goal is to exhaust the restless, chattering part of your mind, to bore it into submission so that a deeper state of awareness can emerge. As the minutes stretch on, the flickering candlelight, the resonant drone of voices, and the incense-laden air combine to create a deeply hypnotic, almost trance-like state. You are simultaneously aware of your posture and breath, and yet detached from your individual self, subsumed into the collective sound. Yet, even in this deeply spiritual practice, the historical reality is nuanced. Scholars of religion and history still debate the precise nature and sound of Tang-era chanting. We have the texts, but we don't have recordings. Was the pace faster or slower than modern practices? Did different sects use different melodic structures? Reconstructions are based on later traditions and written accounts, which are often poetic rather than musically precise. The sound you are creating now, this deep, rolling wave of human voices echoing in the ancient hall, is an educated guess, a powerful echo of a sound we can never be entirely sure of. It's a lost melody, and you are part of its temporary, imagined resurrection. After what feels like both an eternity and a single moment, the chanting slows. The abbot's voice recites the final verse, and then silence returns. It's a different kind of silence now, deeper and more textured than before, ringing with the ghost of the chant. The morning's first and most important work is done. Your mind has been cleared, your spirit aligned with the community, and somewhere in the middle of it all, your stomach has started to rumble. The silence that followed the chant lingers in the air as you and the other monks rise in a single, coordinated movement. You retrieve your shoes from the steps of the great hall and slip them on. The sky outside is no longer black, but a palette of soft grays and muted blues. The world is slowly taking shape around you. Your procession, still silent, files out of the main courtyard and moves towards another, more modest building, the refectory, or dining hall. The refectory is a long, rectangular room, much plainer than the great hall. There are no grand statues or ornate carvings here. The only decorations are the polished, dark wood of the lawn, low tables and the matching benches. The air inside smells of cooked grains and steam. You take your designated spot at a table, sitting upright on the hard bench. A sense of order and discipline from the prayer hall has followed you here. Meal times are not social gatherings. They are a direct continuation of meditative practice. Monks with designated kitchen duties move silently down the rows, carrying large wooden buckets. One bucket is filled with steaming rice porridge, or kani. Another contains a thin vegetable broth. As they reach you, you lift your largest bowl with both hands, a gesture of respectful receptivity. They ladle a few out of the white, watery porridge is plopped into it. It's almost entirely unseasoned. No sugar, no salt, just the plain, honest taste of rice and water. Then, Your middle bowl receives a scoop of the clear, hot broth. Finally, you are given the day's side dish, a couple of small, dark, salted beans for your smallest bowl, and that's it. That is your breakfast. The meal begins only when the abbot, seated at the head of the hall, takes his first bite. You pick up your wooden chopsticks, bow slightly towards your bowl, and begin to eat. The only sound in the hall is the soft clicking of chopsticks against ceramic and the quiet sounds of eating. There is absolutely no conversation. This is the rule of silent eating, a practice designed to keep you mindful. You are supposed to be fully present with your food. You focus on the texture of the kami, the soft, slightly gelatinous grains. You focus on the taste, the subtle sweetness of the rice, the sharp saltiness of the single bean you allow yourself. You are supposed to contemplate the 5 reflections before eating, considering the work involved in bringing this food to you, reflecting on whether your own conduct makes you worthy of this offering, seeing the food as medicine to sustain your body for practice, and so on. It's a complete sensory and philosophical experience. But let's be real for a moment. You are also just a human being, and this breakfast is, by any modern standard, incredibly bland. It is a lesson in simplicity, yes, but it's also a test of your ability to find gratitude in the bare minimum. There's a particular kind of mental fortitude required to treat a bowl of plain porridge with the same reverence as a feast. Here's a curious tidbit about monastic food that often gets overlooked. While the ideal was simplicity, the reality could be more complex. Monasteries, especially large and endowed ones in the Tang Dynasty, were significant landowners. They received donations from wealthy patrons, including gifts of high-quality rice, oils, and even exotic spices, while a small mountain monastery might subsist on plain kangi. A major urban monastery-esque kitchen could produce surprisingly sophisticated vegetarian cuisine. They invented mock meats made from tofu and wheat gluten, dishes so elaborate they could fool the palate. So your bowl of bland porridge is authentic to a certain kind of ascetic life, but it wasn't the universal experience. Somewhere, another monk might be contemplating the 5 reflections over a dish of braised wheat gluten that tastes suspiciously like duck. You eat with deliberate slowness, making sure to scrape every last grain of rice from your bowl with your chopsticks. Wasting even a single grain is considered a grave offense against the farmers who grew it in the community that prepared it. When your bowls are empty, you don't just stack them. A monk comes by with a bucket of hot water. You pour a small amount into your main bowl. Use a chopstick and your finger to wipe it clean, and then, this is the part that might surprise you, you drink the dishwater. This ensures nothing is wasted and leaves your bowl clean for the next meal. The meal concludes as it began, in silence. The abbot signals the end, and everyone places their clean, knitted bowls back into their cloth wrapper. You have taken in just enough energy to fuel the morning's work. It wasn't a pleasurable meal, but it was a perfect one for its purpose to sustain the body without distracting the mind. As you file out of the refectory, the first true rays of sunlight are finally cresting the mountains, bathing the monastery in a pale golden light. The day's chores await. As you step out of the dim refectory, the morning sun greets you properly for the first time. The light is still soft and golden, stretching long shadows across the stone-paved courtyards. The air is crisp and clean, and the world feels freshly washed. The silent, communal part of the morning is over. Now, the monastery begins to hum with the quiet, purposeful activity of a well-run household. This is the time for ZUO-Wu, or manual labor. You don't head for a library or a meditation cushion. You head for a small shed near the outer walls of the monastery. Your tool for the next hour is waiting for you, a simple, long Midas-handled broom made from bound bamboo twigs. Your task is as humble as it is essential sweeping. You are assigned to the main courtyard, the vast open space you just crossed on your way to breakfast. Overnight, A gentle breeze has carpeted the gray flagstones with a scattering of leaves from the ancient ginkgo tree that stands at the center. Your job is to restore the courtyard to a state of pristine order. You begin at one end, your movements slow, deliberate, and rhythmic. Swish, scrape, swish. The sound of the bamboo bristles against the stone is a dry, whispering percussion. You are not attacking the leaves, not frantically trying to get the job done. You are simply sweeping. You focus on the arc of the broom, the feeling of the wooden handle in your hands, the way the leaves gather and tumble before its path. This isn't just a chore. It's a form of active meditation, a core tenet of Zen or Chan Buddhism, which was flourishing during the Tang Dynasty. The famous adage, chop wood, carry water, speaks to this very idea. Enlightenment is not found by escaping the mundane world, but by engaging with it fully, with total mindfulness. Your sweeping is not a means to an end, a clean courtyard. The sweeping is the end. Each stroke of the broom is an opportunity to be fully present in the here and now. Your mind, which might naturally drift to the next task or a philosophical puzzle, is gently brought back, again and again, to the simple reality of the broom, the stones, and the leaves. As you work your way across the vast space, you become a small, solitary figure in a large, ordered world. The sun warms your back through your ochre robe. Other monks are engaged in similar tasks. You see one tending to the moss in the rock garden, another carefully wiping down the wooden verandas with a damp cloth. The entire monastery is being cleaned, cared for, and maintained through this collective, silent effort. Now for a little minus. Known fact about this seemingly simple task: the act of sweeping was so central to monastic life that it became a legend. One of the most famous stories in Zen history involves the sixth patriarch, Xuanzang. He was an illiterate layman working in the monastery kitchen, pounding rice. When the fifth patriarch was looking for his successor, he asked the monks to compose a poem demonstrating their understanding of enlightenment. The head monk, a learned scholar, wrote: the body is a Bodhi tree. The mind is standing mirror bright. At all times polish it diligently, and let no dust alight. It was a verse about constant effort, much like your diligent sweeping. But the illiterate Xuanzang, hearing this, offered his own verse: Bodhi is fundamentally without any tree. The bright mirror is also not a stand. Fundamentally, there is not a single thing where could dust alight. His verse showed a deeper, more instantaneous understanding of emptiness, and he became the successor. So as you sweep, you're not just cleaning. You are participating in a living philosophical debate about the very nature of enlightenment. Are you polishing the mirror, or realizing there's no mirror to begin with? It's a lot to think about for a guy with a broom. The historical interpretation of monastic labor is also, as always, a subject of debate among scholars. The idealized version, which you are living now, is that all monks, from the newest novice to the seasoned master, participated in daily labor. This was a radical idea in a hierarchical society like Tang China, where scholars and officials looked down on manual work. The Chan school's insistence on a day without work is a day without food was a powerful statement. However, historical records suggest that as monasteries grew larger and wealthier, this ideal was not always maintained. Large monasteries might have had lay workers, tenants, or even servants to perform the most strenuous tasks, freeing up the senior monks to focus on study, teaching, and administration. So the question remains, was this universal, democratic labor consistent reality? Or was it an ideal that waxed and waned with the fortunes of each specific institution? Your rhythmic sweeping has brought you to the base of the great ginkgo tree. You gather the last of the fallen leaves into a neat pile with a final, gentle swish. You lean on your broom for a moment, your breath steady, your mind quiet. The courtyard is immaculate. The flagstones are bare and clean, their geometric pattern now stark and clear under the morning sun. You haven't just cleaned a space. You have, in a small way, reset your own mind. The external order reflects a desired internal state. You take the pile of leaves to the compost heap behind the kitchens, adding them to the cycle of decay and rebirth. Your work here is done. The sun is higher now, and the chill of the morning has completely burned away. It is time to trade the broom for the brush. Leaving the broom behind, you make your way to a different part of the monastery. A long, quiet hall on the eastern side, positioned to catch the best of the morning light. This is the scriptorium, the copying room. The moment you step inside, the atmosphere changes. The smells of the courtyard damp earthen leaves are replaced by the refined, scholarly scents of aged paper, ink, and wood. The room is filled with rows of low, dark lacquered desks, each one just large enough for a single person. Unlike the rough benches of the refectory, here you have a proper cushion to sit on, a sign of the importance of this work. Several other monks are already in their places, heads bowed, completely absorbed in their tasks. The silence in this room is different from the pre-dawn silence of the prayer hall. It's not an empty silence. It's a silence filled with immense concentration. The only sound is the almost inaudible, whispery show of fine haired brushes moving across sheets of paper. You take your place at an empty desk. Everything you need is already laid out with meticulous care. There is a small, heavy inkstone, a solid stick of black ink, a delicate water dropper, and a porcelain brush rest shaped like a miniature mountain range. To your right sits a stack of smooth, pale yellow paper. To your left is the source text-bound volume of a Buddhist Sutra, its pages filled with elegant, complex characters. Your task for the next few hours is to replicate this text, character by character, page by page. First, you prepare the ink. You use the water dropper to place a few drops of clean water into the shallow well of the ink stone. Then you pick up the ink stick, a dense, fragrant block of hardened soot binder. Holding it perfectly upright, you begin to grind it against the stone in a slow, circular motion. This is not a rushed task. It's a meditative prelude, a way to settle your mind and body. The friction slowly releases the black pigment into the water, creating a pool of rich, dark, liquid ink. The process fills the air with a faint, earthy, almost sweet scent. You control the consistency yourself. To thicken, the brush will drag. To thinnen, the ink will bleed. After several minutes of patient grinding, you have a perfect, glossy pool of black. You pick up your brush. It's a simple bamboo handle, but the tip is made of fine, soft animal hair, perhaps wolf, goat, or rabbit, tapered to a perfect point. You dip the tip into the ink, saturating the bristles. Then, you take the first sheet of paper. It's likely a high quality paper, perhaps made from mulberry bark or hemp, chosen for its ability to absorb ink without feathering. Then you begin. You look at the first character in the source text. You hold its image in your mind, its balance, its proportions, its stroke order. You take a breath. Then you commit the brush to the paper. Your hand moves with a practiced grace. A downward stroke, a horizontal line, a sharp hook at the end. The character appears on the page. The perfect black form on the pale background. You dip the brush again. You move to the next character. This work is the epitome of mindfulness. It demands absolute, unwavering attention. If your mind wanders, your hand will slip. A moment of impatience will ruin a stroke. A flicker of ego will make the character clumsy. You are not just copying words. You are tracing the very form of wisdom. In an age before printing presses, this was the only way knowledge could be preserved and disseminated. Your hands are the bridge between generations, ensuring that these sacred teachings will survive. You are not an artist expressing yourself. You are a conduit, a vessel for the text to flow through. Here's a curious, related fact. The act of copying was considered a highly meritorious deed, generating good karma for the scribe. Wealthy patrons would often commission the copying of entire canons of scripture, a massive undertaking that could take years, as a way of earning merit for themselves and their families. This created a huge demand for skilled monk-scribes. But here's the twist sometimes. To get the job done faster, a single, massive scroll would be divided among several monks, each one copying a section. They would have to match their calligraphy style perfectly so that the final product looked like the work of a single, impossibly diligent hand. It was an act of supreme ego minus effacement, deliberately erasing one's own artistic signature for the sake of a unified whole. The nature of the text being copied also presents a fascinating historical puzzle. The Tang Dynasty was a period of immense translation activity, with scholars like Xuanzang, the monk who inspired Journey to the West, bringing back thousands of scrolls from India. They would then lead teams of monks to translate these Sanskrit texts into Chinese. This was a hugely complex intellectual endeavor. So while you might be engaged in the simple, repetitive act of copying an existing Chinese text, other monks in other, more specialized monasteries were engaged in the first draft creation of these very texts. Historians still debate the exact process. How did they handle intransigable philosophical concepts? Did they invent new Chinese terms or try to find close approximations? The very characters you are now so carefully drawing are the result of decades of intense, cross-cultural, scholarly debate. You are copying the final product of a massive intellectual project. Hour after hour, you fill the page with neat, vertical columns of black characters. The world outside the scriptorium fades away. There is only the ink, the paper, the brush, and the endless stream of sacred words. Your back might ache, your eyes might burn from the concentration, but your mind is calm and clear, anchored to the single, vital task. You are a living machine of preservation, a quiet guardian of knowledge, ensuring that the light of the Dharma, captured in these fragile forms, will not be extinguished. After several hours in the silent, focused world of the scriptorium, the low, resonant chime echoes through the monastery. It's the signal that the morning's work period has ended. You carefully clean your brush, wash the inkstone, and cover your unfinished work. The change in atmosphere is immediate, as you and the other monks file out of the hall. The intense, inward facing silence gives way to a low murmur of conversation. The strict rule of silence is relaxed for this brief period before the midday meal. Instead of heading towards the refectory, you and a small group of your fellow monks turn towards a small, semi-enclosed pavilion in one of the quieter gardens. This is the time for a different kind of mental exercise, one that is as much a part of your training as chanting or copying the formal debate. You take your place on a cushion, facing one of your Dharma brothers, a monk of similar age and standing. Let's call him Hui Jing. They chi as sharp, quick-witted, and has a knack for finding the logical flaw in any argument. A senior monk, acting as a moderator, sits slightly elevated, observing the proceedings with a calm, neutral expression. This isn't an angry argument or a casual chat. It is a highly structured, almost ritualized intellectual contest. The moderator proposes the topic for today's debate. It's a classic, one that monks have wrestled with for centuries. Does a dog have booed a minus nature? It sounds simple, almost absurd, but it's a profound philosophical trapdoor. The Mahayana doctrine you study teaches that all sentient beings have the potential for enlightenment, the Buddha minus nature. So, the obvious answer is yes, but a famous Zen master, Zhao Zhu, when asked this very question, famously replied Wu, which translates to no, or nothing, or emptiness. His answer was meant to shatter the student's reliance on simple yes-no logic. Your role today is to argue the affirmative: a dog does have Buddha minus nature. Hui Jing's role is to argue the negative. The debate begins. You start by quoting from the sutras, citing a passage from the Nirvana Sutra that explicitly states all beings possess this innate potential. Your argument is doctrinal, based on the highest authority. You lay out your point clearly and calmly. If the sutras, the recorded words of the Buddha, state that all sentient beings have Buddha minus nature, you posit and a dog is undeniably a sentient being, then it must logically follow that a dog has Buddha minus nature. Hui Jing lets you finish. He nods, a sign of respect for your opening. Then he counters. He doesn't dispute the sutra. Instead, he comes at you from the side, with logic. If a dog has Buddha minus nature, he asks, his voice even, why is it born a dog? Why does it live a life of chasing sticks and barking at strangers, seemingly trapped in ignorance? If this perfect nature is present, why is it so utterly obscured? Now you're on the back foot. You can't just repeat the sutra. You have to engage with his point. You formulate a reply, perhaps using an analogy. The Buddha minus nature is like a mirror covered in the dust of ignorance and karma. You argue, the mirror is still perfect underneath. The dog's current form is due to the dust of its past actions, but the mirror, its essential nature, remains unstained and capable of being polished. Hui Jing pounces on your analogy. You speak of a mirror and dust. You have created two things. Is Buddha minus nature one thing and ignorance another? If so, where does one end and the other begin? He is pushing you towards the philosophical complexities of dualism. This bag, minus and minus fourth, is the core of the exercise. It's a form of mental sparring. You are forced to think on your feet, to defend your positions, and to see the weaknesses in your own understanding. It's not about winning or losing in a conventional sense. It's about sharpening your mind until it can cut through the fog of conventional thought. Here's a peculiar detail about these monastic debates, especially as they developed in the Tibetan tradition, which inherited much from this period. They were highly theatrical. Debaters would punctuate their points with dramatic hand claps, foot stomps, and formalized gestures. A clap at the end of a question was a way of saying, "Here is my point. It is sharp and clear. Respond." While your Tang minus Sarah debate might be more restrained, the underlying energy is the same. It's an active, engaged, and sometimes physically expressive form of learning. The very existence and nature of these formal debates in Xuanzang monasteries of the Tang period is, of course, a topic of scholarly discussion, while structured debate was a cornerstone of Indian Buddhist monasticism and became highly developed in Tibet. Its role in Chan, which often emphasized non-minus verbal transmission and direct experience over intellectualism, is less clear. Some schools of thought suggest that Chan masters actively discouraged this kind of scholastic wrangling, seeing it as another mental trap. Others argue that it was an essential tool for training novices, a way to deconstruct their preconceived notions before they could move on to non-minus thinking. The scene you are in now represents a middle ground Dame monastery that values both intellectual rigor and meditative insight, seeing them as two wings of the same bird. Hui Jing poses another difficult question, and you find yourself momentarily stuck. You have no immediate answer. The senior monk moderator doesn't intervene. He allows the silence to hang in the air. The point is not to be rescued, but to experience the limit of your own intellect. In that moment of failure, of not minus knowing, there is a kind of opening. It's humbling, and in that humility, there is a lesson. The debate ends not with a conclusion, but with the ringing of another bell. The question is not resolved. It is left hanging, for you to contemplate later. You and Hui Jing bow to each other and to the moderator. There is no animosity. You have helped each other see the edges of your own knowledge. You walk away from the pavilion together, your minds buzzing and alive. And just in time, too. The sun is now directly overhead. The bell that ended your debate was not just a signal for a change of activity. It was a precise astronomical marker. You walk out of the shade of the debate pavilion and into the full bright glare of the courtyard. The sun is no longer casting long, gentle shadows. It is almost directly overhead, beating down with a surprising intensity. The flagstones, which were cool this morning, now radiate a comfortable warmth through the thin soles of your cloth shoes. This is the hour of Wuxi, the noon hour, a pivotal moment in the monastery's daily rhythm. You look up, squinting against the light. There are no clocks on the walls, no watches on anyone's wrist. Your sense of time is tuned to the natural world. You know the hour because of the sun's position in the sky, the shortness of the shadows, and the particular quality of the light. For centuries, monasteries like this one have used a gnomon, essentially a vertical pole or sundial, to determine the exact moment of solar noon. It's the most reliable timepiece you have. This moment, when the sun reaches its zenith, is critically important for one reason. It marks the beginning of the end of your eating for the day. The core monastic rule, one of the most famous and widely practiced, is Muyu, or Biyushi no eating past noon. This isn't a vague guideline. In many monasteries, it was taken with absolute seriousness. Once the shadow on the sundial is at its shortest and begins to lengthen again, the window for consuming solid food closes, and it will not open again until the sun rises tomorrow. As you walk towards the refectory for the second and final time, there's a subtle but palpable shift in the monastery's energy. There's a quiet sense of purpose, a knowledge that this meal is the last chance to fuel the body for the long stretch of the afternoon, evening, and night. The low conversations that were permitted after the morning's work die down as you approach the dining hall. The time for talk is over. The time for mindful eating is about to begin again. This no eating past noon rule is ancient, tracing back to the earliest days of Buddhism. The original reasons were practical. Monks who relied on daily alms rounds needed to finish their meals before noon so as not to impose on lay supporters late in the day. It also freed up the afternoon for meditation and study, unburdened by the processes of digestion. But over time, it took on deeper, more spiritual meanings. It became a powerful exercise in discipline and self-restraint. To consciously refrain from eating, even when hungry, is a way of observing the arising of desire and choosing not to be controlled by it. It's a daily, tangible practice of renunciation. It also was believed to have health benefits, leading to a lighter body and a clearer mind, making evening meditation sessions more effective. You're not just skipping dinner. You're actively cultivating a state of being that is less tethered to the body's demands. Here's a curious, almost comical detail related to time-keeping in the monastery. While the sun was the primary timekeeper, what happened on a cloudy day? Monasteries developed another ingenious device, the water clock, or klepstia. This was a large vessel of water with a small hole, from which water dripped at a constant rate into a receiving vessel marked with our lines. It was a technology that required significant maintenance and calibration. But even more esoteric was the incense clock, a special, slow-burning incense stick, sometimes laid out in a long, serpentine pattern within a tray of ash, would be marked at intervals. As the incense smoldered, it would reach these marks, sometimes triggering a tiny bell or a thread that would drop a small weight. So, on a day when the sun was hidden, your lunch schedule might be determined by the slow, smoky consumption of a fragrant stick of incense. The strictness of the no eating past noon rule, however, is another area where historians find fascinating variations. The rule itself seems clear, but the definition of eating could be surprisingly flexible. What constituted food? Solid grains and vegetables were certainly out. But what about liquids? Many monastic codes allowed for the consumption of certain juices in the afternoon, provided they were strained and contained no solids. This could include fruit juices or thin broths. Sugar and honey were also often permitted, seen as medicines to help sustain the monks through the long fast. This led to a whole category of permissible afternoon beverages, sometimes called yaoshi, or medicine food. The historical debate centers on how liberally this was interpreted. Was a monk's afternoon medicine a simple cup of strained ginger water, or could it be a thick, sweet, nutrient-rich concoction that bordered on being a liquid meal? The line between discipline and finding loopholes is an old one. As you approach the dining hall doors, You can already smell the savory aroma of cooked vegetables and steamed rice. A scent far more complex than this morning's simple kani. Your stomach, which has been quietly dormant, gives a little lurch of anticipation. You know this is it. This is the meal that has to carry you through the next 18 hours. You join the line of ochre robes, ready to enter the hall. Take your seat and receive your final portion of sustenance for the day. Acutely aware that the sun overhead has already begun its slow descent towards the western mountains. The clock is ticking. You step into the refectory, and the scene is a near-minus perfect repetition of the morning, yet subtly different. The light flooding through the windows is brighter, closer. The smells are richer. The quiet anticipation is more focused. This is the main meal of the day, the one that truly sustains the community. You take your seat on the hard bench, arrange your 3 bowls, and wait. The kitchen monks move with the same silent efficiency, but their buckets hold a more substantial bounty. The first ladle into your largest bowl doesn't bring watery kani, but a mound of fluffy, steamed white rice. The second bucket contains a thick, savory stew of seasonal vegetables, perhaps hardy greens, chunks of melon or gourd, and mushrooms, all simmered in a broth, seasoned with fermented bean paste. It's a far cry from the plainness of breakfast. This is a genuinely nourishing meal. Your smallest bowl receives a few slices of pickled radish. Its sharp, vinegary crunch meant to cleanse the palate and aid digestion. You hold your bowls and receive the food with the same ritualized gesture of gratitude. When everyone has been served, the abbot takes the first bite, and 100 sets of chopsticks are lifted in unison. The hall fills with the same quiet sounds of eating, but you approach this meal with a different mindset. This is not just about staving off hunger, it's about conscious fueling. You eat with deliberate slowness, chewing each mouthful thoroughly. This practice has a name or yogi, which translates roughly to just enough. You are to take just enough food to maintain your health and practice, that no more. It's a physical lesson in the middle way, avoiding the extremes of ascetic self minus mortification and gluttonous indulgence. You focus entirely on the food, the earthy taste of the mushrooms, the slight bitterness of the greens, the comforting softness of the rice, the sharp tang of the pickle. Each flavor is distinct, and you give it your full attention. As you eat, you are meant to be deeply aware of the fact that this is it. This is the last solid food that will pass your lips until tomorrow morning. This awareness changes your relationship with the meal. Every bite feels more significant. There is no thought of I can have a snack later. The finality of the rule gives the meal a certain weight, a quiet importance. You are not just eating, you are provisioning your body for a long, quiet journey through the afternoon and night. This practice of over minus, noon minus, not minus seating has a profound psychological effect. It neatly cleaves the day in two. The morning is for intake of food, of knowledge, of worldly tasks. The afternoon and evening are for output, for digestion in both the literal and metaphorical sense, for meditation, for reflection, for quiet. By limiting the window for eating, you are creating a vast, uncluttered expanse of time in the latter half of the day, a space free from the distraction of meals. Here's a small, practical detail about this meal that might not be obvious and needed to be nutritionally potent, because this was the main source of calories for the day. Monastic cooks became masters of vegetarian cuisine. Tofu, or dufu, which was developed in China centuries earlier, would have been a staple. There was a cheap, versatile, and excellent source of protein, capable of being prepared in hundreds of ways. They would also use a variety of beans, nuts, and seeds to ensure the diet was balanced. So while your meal is simple, it's the result of a long tradition of sophisticated vegetarian nutritional science, all designed to make this single meal as effective as possible. However, the no eating past noon rule, while a cornerstone of monastic discipline, was also one of the most frequently debated interpreted regulations in Buddhist history. The Vinaya, The ancient Code of Monastic Law is filled with commentaries and stories about this very rule. What if a monk was traveling and couldn't get food before noon? What if a monk was sick and needed nourishment to recover? These were not just abstract questions. They were real-minus life challenges to the ideal. This led to a complex body of exceptions and allowances. Sickness was almost always a valid reason to break the rule. The medicinal foods, or yao, we talked about earlier, were the most common workaround. The ongoing debate among Buddhist scholars is just how far these exceptions went. Were they rare, life-minus saving measures, or did they become, in some less-minus strict monasteries, a kind of routine afternoon tea, a way to bend the rule without formally breaking it? This tension between the absolute rule and practical human needs is a constant theme in the history of religion. You finish your meal, using the last of your rice to wipe the stew from your main bowl. You leave not a single grain, not a single drop of sauce. As before, a monk brings hot water, and you perform the ritual cleaning, drinking the warm, savory dishwater to ensure nothing is wasted. You nest your clean bowls, wrap them in their cloth, and place them beside you. The meal has concluded. You feel a sense of fullness and satisfaction, but not sluggishness. It was a perfectly measured amount of food. A quiet sense of peace settles over you, the peace of a fundamental need having been met. You know that the physical sensation of hunger will likely return in a few hours, that you are prepared for it. That, too, will be part of the practice. As you file out of the refectory, the sun is just beginning its descent. The great, empty expanse of the afternoon stretches before you. You have been fed. Now the real work of digestion and meditation begins. Leaving the refectory, you don't head back to the quiet halls of study or the meditation cushions. The period immediately following the main meal is dedicated to a different kind of labor than the morning sweeping. It's a more grounded, earthy, and strenuous form of work. You and a group of other monks make your way towards the back of the monastery, past the kitchens and storehouses, to a large, sun-drenched patch of land enclosed by a low stone wall. This is the monastery's vegetable garden. The moment you pass through the simple wooden gate, the smells change from incense and old wood to rich, dark soil, composting leaves, and the sharp, green scent of living plants. The garden is a beautiful, ordered chaos. Neat rows of leafy greens stand next to climbing vines on bamboo trellises. There are patches of hardy root vegetables, pungent herbs, and perhaps a few fruit trees along the southern wall. This garden is the monastery's lifeline. It produces a significant portion of the food you just ate and the food you will eat tomorrow. It is a living pantry, and it requires constant attention. Your task this afternoon is weeding. You find your assigned section, a patch of what looks like bok choy. You kneel down on a small woven mat, the sun warming your back. The work is simple but demands care. You have to distinguish the tender shoots of the vegetables from the tenacious, unwanted weeds that compete for sun, water, and nutrients. You work with your bare hands. You feel the texture of the soil cool and slightly damp beneath the sun-baked surface. You wrap your fingers around the base of a stubborn weed, brace yourself, and pull. It comes free with a satisfying rip of roots. You toss it into a nearby basket. You move to the next one, and the next. This is not idle work. Just like the sweeping, it is a form of active meditation. Your focus narrows to the small patch of earth in front of you. Your mind, which could be full from the meal or buzzing from the morning's debate, is forced to quiet down and attend to the physical reality of the garden. The repetitive motion of pulling weeds becomes a rhythm, a mantra for your hands. You are not just removing unwanted plants. You are actively participating in the cultivation of life. You are protecting the food source of your entire community. This emphasis on agricultural self-sufficiency was a defining feature of many chans and monasteries in the Tang era. It was famously institutionalized by the master Bai Zhang Highway, who established the rule: a day without work is a day without food. This was a radical departure from the Indian model, where monks were expected to rely solely on alms, like growing their own food. Chinese monasteries became less dependent on the whims of donors and more resilient during times of social upheaval or persecution. Your work in this garden is a direct expression of that pragmatic, independent spirit. You are not a beggar. You are a farmer-monk, a co-creator of your own sustenance. Now for a fascinating and slightly pungent historical tidbit. How did they keep this garden so fertile? The answer is night soil. In an era before chemical fertilizers, the most potent and readily available fertilizer was human waste. The monastery's latrines were not just waste pits. They were collection points. The collected waste would be carefully composted, often mixed with ash, soil, and other organic matter. Over a long period, this process would kill pathogens and create a rich, nutrient-dense fertilizer that could then be returned to the garden. It was a perfect, closed-loop system of sustainability. So, the vegetables you ate for lunch were, in a very real sense, nourished by the digested meals of months past. It's a humbling thought and a powerful illustration of the cyclical nature of existence that is so central to Buddhist thought. Of course, the degree to which a monastery was truly self-sufficient is a matter of historical investigation. While the ideal was to grow everything needed, this was likely only possible for smaller, more remote communities. The large, prestigious monastery with hundreds of monks would have needed vast tracts of land and a huge labor force to feed everyone. Historical records show that major monasteries were, in fact, huge landowners. They owned not just gardens, but vast agricultural estates, forests, and even mills, which were farmed and operated by tenant farmers, not just the monks themselves. These monasteries functioned as powerful economic engines. So, while your hands-on work in this garden is a vital part of the Chan ideal, the academic debate continues on how this ideal squared with the economic realities of being a major institutional landowner in Tang China. Was your labor symbolic, or was it truly the difference between eating and going hungry? The answer likely varied greatly from one place to another. You continue your work under the warm afternoon sun. You can hear the hum of insects, the distant call of a crow. A gentle breeze rustles the leaves of the plants around you. There's a deep sense of satisfaction in this simple, productive labor. You are connected to the earth, to the food you eat, and to the well-being of your community in the most direct way possible. You see the tangible results of your effort in the cleared rows and the growing pile of weeds. It's a simple, honest, and profoundly grounding way to spend an afternoon. The day is moving on, and you are helping to plant the seeds of tomorrow. As you continue your work in the garden, a sound breaks the rhythm of your weeding. The distant, clear tone of a small bronze bell struck once. It's not one of the major bells that mark the main hours of the day. This is a softer, more specific signal. It's the bell at the Shanmen, the main mountain gate, announcing the arrival of a visitor. A few moments later, a novice monk appears at the edge of the garden. He bows to the monk supervising the work detail and speaks in a low voice. The supervising monk nods and then looks over the kneeling figures, his eyes landing on you. He calls your name. You have been summoned. You dust the soil from your hands and knees. Excuse yourself from the row of vegetables and follow the novice. Your heart beats a little faster. A summons like this is unusual. It pulls you out of the predictable, internal world of the monastery and prepares you for an encounter with the world outside. The world of Hongchen, the reed dust of worldly affairs. You are led not to the abbot's quarters, but to a small, simple reception hall near the front of the monastery. This is a place designed for meeting lay visitors. It's clean and sparse, but a bit more comfortable than the monk's own quarters, with slightly better cushions and a low table holding a simple tea set. Waiting for you is a man who looks profoundly out of place. He is dressed in the fine silks of a wealthy merchant, or a minor official. His robes are dyed in rich, vibrant colors that seem almost shockingly loud compared to the muted tones of the monastery. He wears a formal cap, and his face is etched with a worry that he cannot conceal. He is a shizhu, a donor or patron of the monastery. When he sees you, he rises and gives a deep, respectful bow. You, in your simple, dirt-stained work robe, return the bow with the calm formality of a monk. You have been chosen to meet him for a specific reason. Perhaps your family was from the same region, or maybe you are known for your calm demeanor and ability to listen. The novice who brought you here serves tea, a gesture of hospitality, and then retreats, leaving you alone with the visitor. He begins to speak, his voice filled with anxiety. His business is failing. His eldest son is sick. He is plagued by bad dreams. He has made the long journey up the mountain to this place of peace-seeking. Something, an answer, a blessing, a bit of good fortune. He looks at you, the humble monk, as if you hold the key to a sacred power that can solve his worldly problems. Your role here is delicate. You are not a fortune teller or a magician. Your job is to listen. Use it, perfectly still, your hands resting in your lap, and you offer him the gift of your complete, undivided attention. You let him pour out his worries, his fears, his hopes. You nod occasionally, not in agreement, but in understanding. You are a calm, empty vessel for his troubles. This interaction is a core part of the monastery's function in Tang society. Monasteries were not just isolated spiritual retreats. They were vital community centers. People came to them for all sorts of reasons: to pray for rain, to seek blessings for a new venture, to hold memorial services for ancestors, and, like this man, to find solace for a troubled heart. The monastery was a spiritual anchor in a turbulent world. Here's a fascinating detail about these patrons: their donations were the lifeblood of the institution. A wealthy patron like this man might donate money, land, or precious goods like bolts of silk or sacks of high-quality rice. In return for his generosity, he would earn merit gong di. This merit was believed to ensure a better rebirth for him and his family, and could even be transferred to his deceased ancestors to improve their lot in the afterlife. It was a complex spiritual economy. This man's donation wasn't just charity. It was an investment in his family's cosmic well-being, and your role is to be the human face of that transaction. The historical relationship between monasteries and their patrons, however, is a subject of much scholarly analysis. It was a symbiotic but sometimes fraught relationship. Monasteries needed patrons to survive and flourish, but this dependence could also lead to compromises. Abbots might feel pressure to cater to the wishes of powerful donors, potentially diluting the purity of their spiritual practice. A wealthy official might demand an elaborate, expensive ritual that ran counter to the monastic ideal of simplicity. The historical records are full of accounts of tension between spiritual ideals and economic necessities. The very existence of this comfortable reception ruined the fine tea you are serving are, in a way, a product of this compromise. After the man has finished speaking, a long silence fills the room. He looks at you, his eyes pleading. He is waiting for your wisdom. You do not offer him a solution. You don't tell him his business will recover or his son will be healed. Instead, you speak to him in simple terms about the nature of impermanence, of watching. You remind him that all things, good and bad, are transient. You might suggest that he dedicate his actions to the well-being of others, to cultivate compassion as an antidote to his own anxiety. You might give him a simple verse from a sutra to contemplate. You are not solving his problems. You are giving him a new frame through which to view them. You are offering him not a magic cure, but a tool for his own mind. He seems to listen intently, absorbing your quiet words. He may or may not fully understand the philosophical depth, but he grasps the calm at its center. After a while, he seems to relax. A bit of the tension leaves his shoulders. He thanks you profusely, his voice thick with emotion. He leaves a donation, perhaps a small bag of silver coins on the table. You accept it not for yourself, but on behalf of the community. You escort him to the door and bow as he departs. You watch his brightly colored figure retreat down the path, a splash of worldly color slowly being reabsorbed by the mountain. You stand there for a moment, the bag of coins feeling heavy in your hand. You have just touched the red dust, and now you must return to your own world of quiet, disciplined practice. The encounter a stark reminder of the suffering that your monastic life is dedicated to transcending. You deliver the patron's donation to the monastery's bursar, the monk in charge of finances, and then return to the work detail in the garden. But you only spend a short while longer pulling weeds. Soon, another bell rings, signaling the end of the afternoon's labor period. You clean your hands and feet at the washing basin, the cool water a welcome relief after the dusty work and the intense social encounter. Your body is tired, your stomach is empty, and your mind is clear. It is the perfect state for what comes next. You make your way, along with all the other monks, back towards the main complex. But you don't go to the meditation hall or the scriptorium. You are guided to another large hall, one used specifically for lectures and teachings. This is the Dharma hall. The setup is similar to the prayer hall, with neat rows of cushions on the floor, but the focus is different. At the front, there isn't a grand altar with statues, but a single, elevated high-backed, carved wooden chair placed on a raised platform. This is the abbot's teaching seat. You find your cushion, settle into your posture, then wait. The hall, which was humming with the low murmur of tired monks, slowly falls silent. The abbot enters. He is an old man, perhaps in his 70s, but he moves with a straight back dignity. He doesn't rush. He walks slowly to the platform, climbs the few steps, and settles into his chair. He surveys the hall, his gaze seeming to pass over every single monk present. For a long moment, he says nothing, letting the silence deepen, allowing everyone's attention to settle and focus entirely on him. Then, he begins to speak. His voice is not loud, but it is steady and clear, honed by decades of teaching. He is not giving a fiery sermon. He is delivering a zhongjing, a systematic explanation of a sacred text. Today, he is continuing his multi-week lecture on the Diamond Sutra. He starts by reciting a few lines from the text, and then he begins to unpack their meaning. His lecture is dense, scholarly, and filled with subtle philosophical points. He talks about the nature of emptiness shunyata, the illusion of the self, and the paradox of form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. He quotes from other sutras, references famous commentaries, and tells allegorical stories to illustrate his points. For your mind, which was just engaged in the earthy simplicity of the garden, this is a massive cognitive shift. You must focus intently to follow his train of thought. But there's a problem. The hall is worn. The work in the sun has made you physically tired. Your stomach is empty, but your body is still processing the large noon meal. And the abbot's voice, while clear, is also a low, steady, monotonous drone. You feel your eyelids getting heavy. This is the ultimate test of a monk's afternoon willpower. You are fighting against the most basic, primal urge, the post-lunch dip, the siesta impulse. You straighten your back, trying to force alertness into your spine. You focus on your breath. You try to hang on to the abbot's words, but they start to swim in your mind. The concept of non-duality begins to merge with a powerful desire to just close your eyes for a second. You glance subtly to your left and right. You are not alone. You see another monk, the young novice, his head nodding forward before he jerks it back up, his eyes wide with momentary panic. An older monk near the back has assumed a posture of such perfect, stony stillness that you suspect he achieved it by falling asleep with his back perfectly straight. This drowsy struggle is a timeless part of monastic life. In fact, It's central to one of the most famous legends in all of Zen. The story goes that Bodhidharma, the first patriarch of Zen in China, once fell asleep while meditating. He was so furious with himself for his lack of discipline that he cut off his own eyelids and threw them to the ground, where they landed. The first tea plants sprouted. From then on, monks would drink tea to stay awake during long meditation sessions. While the story is, of course, a myth, it beautifully illustrates the central conflict you are experiencing right now, the war between the disciplined mind and the tired body. It also provides a legendary origin for tea's vital role in monastic culture. The very structure of these lectures is also a point of historical interest. How scripted were they? The abbot is speaking without notes, seemingly spontaneously. But historians debate whether these were really extra manupus or were carefully memorized and rehearsed performances. The classic images of the enlightened master whose wisdom flows forth effortlessly. The reality may have been that a successful abbot was also a skilled orator who spent hours preparing his lectures to appear effortless. Was this genuine spontaneity or masterful rhetoric? It was likely a combination of both. The abbot's deep immersion in the texts allowed him to speak with fluid authority, but that fluency was itself the product of a lifetime of study and practice. You fight to stay present. You dig your fingernails lightly into your palm to create a small, sharp sensation to anchor your awareness. You focus on one of the abbot's phrases, a dream, an illusion, a pebble, a shadow, and repeat it silently to yourself. You manage to latch back onto the flow of his lecture for a few minutes, feeling a small victory. You understand a point about the illusory nature of phenomena, and it feels like a genuine insight. Then, you lose the thread again. His voice becomes a soothing, meaningless sound, the gentle lapping of waves on the shore of your consciousness. Your head dips. You are, for a split second, asleep. You are dreaming. You are in the garden, but the weeds are pulling themselves up. You are listening to the patron, but he is speaking in rhymes. You snap back to awareness with a jolt of adrenaline. You hope no one noticed. The lecture is still going on. The abbot is still speaking. The war is not over. You take a deep, silent breath and begin again, trying to ride the fine line between deep concentration and the sweet, powerful call of oblivion. The abbot's lecture concludes not with a grand finale, but with a simple, quiet phrase. He nods once to the assembled monks, and the spell is broken. You feel a collective, subtle sigh of relief ripple through the hall as monks stretch their stiff backs and legs. The intense, sleepy focus of the lecturer gives way to the next phase of the afternoon's practice. You file out of the Dharma hall, back into the late afternoon air. The sun is lower in the sky now, and the light has turned a warmer, more golden color. The heat of midday has dissipated, replaced by a comfortable warmth. This is the time for Jingsheng, or walking meditation. You are not going far. You head to one of the monastery's cloistered courtyards, a smaller, more intimate space than the grand central yard. It might be a simple square of raked gravel, or a stone path that winds around a small, mossy rock garden. The point of the space is to be enclosed and free from distraction. You and a dozen other monks begin to walk. There is no destination. You walk in a slow, continuous circle or a line, following the monk in front of you. The pace is incredibly, almost unnaturally, slow. Each step is a universal sensation. Your instructions are to focus your entire awareness on the act of walking. You begin by feeling the intention to lift your right foot. You feel the muscles in your leg engage. You feel the foot lift from the ground. You feel it move through the air. You feel the sensation of your heel making contact with the stone path, then the ball of your foot, then your toes. You feel the weight of your body transfer from your left leg to your right. Then, you begin the process all over again with the left foot. It sounds simple, but it is maddeningly difficult. Your mind, accustomed to walking as an automatic, unconscious activity, rebels. It wants to think about the abbot's lecture, about the hungry feeling starting to stir in your stomach, about an itch on your nose. Your job is to gently, without judgment, bring your attention back, again and again, to the sole of your foot. This practice is the perfect antidote to the drowsiness of the lecture hall and the stiffness of sitting. It brings your awareness out of your head and firmly back into your body. It's a way of grounding yourself, of experiencing the present moment through direct, physical sensation. While sitting meditation zazen is often seen as the primary form of practice, walking meditation is considered its equal a vital way to cultivate mindfulness in movement. Here's a curious, little minus known aspect of jingxing the speed. While you are practicing a very slow, deliberate form, there were other, more extreme versions. Some schools, particularly in later periods, practiced a form of extremely fast walking meditation. Monks would walk rapidly in a circle, sometimes for hours, using the intense physical exertion and dizziness to break down the barrier between subject and object, to exhaust the conscious mind and achieve a state of non-minus thinking. So while you're peaceful, slow walk is a common image. Somewhere else another monk might be power-minus walking his way to enlightenment. The posture is also key. Your hands are held in a specific position, or mudra. Often, one hand is closed in a soft fist, and the other hand gently covers it. With both held at the level of your stomach, your back is straight, your gaze is lowered, directed at the ground a few feet in front of you, so you are aware of the path but not distracted by your surroundings. You are a self-minus contained unit of awareness, moving slowly through space. The philosophical underpinnings of this practice are also a subject of continuous exploration by scholars and practitioners. Is the goal simply to be mindful of the physical sensations? Or is the walking itself a metaphor? Each step is a moment in time, arising and passing away. The path is your life, and you are simply walking it, one moment, one step at a time. The practice becomes a living demonstration of impermanence. The foot is lifted birth. It hangs in the air life. It is placed down death. And the cycle begins again. You are not just walking around a courtyard. You are walking through the fundamental truths of existence. The historical debate here is subtle. Did early Chan practitioners view this as a simple mindfulness tool? Or was it always imbued with this deep, allegorical meaning? The texts are oft unpoetic and open to interpretation. You continue your slow, rhythmic walk. The sun sinks lower, casting long, dramatic shadows across the gravel. The world seems to slow down to match your pace. The only sounds are the soft scrape of your cloth, shoes on the stone, and the gentle sigh of the wind in the pine trees bordering the courtyard. The hunger in your stomach is a distant, dull ache. You acknowledge the sensation, label it hunger, and then return your focus to your feet. The itch on your nose is just an itch. You acknowledge it, and return to your feet, a memory of your life before the monastery arises. You acknowledge it, and return to your feet. You are not trying to stop your thoughts or sensations. You are learning to not be carried away by them. You are becoming the calm center in the midst of your own mental weather. For a few fleeting moments, you succeed. Your mind becomes completely still, completely absorbed in the feeling of your foot connecting with the ground. In that moment, there is no past, no future, no hunger, no you. There is only the walking, and it is enough. As the walking meditation concludes, signaled by a quiet tap on a wooden block, the formal, structured parts of the afternoon are over. The sun is now hanging low in the west, and the monastery enters a period of quieter, more personal time. There are no scheduled lectures or communal chores. This is a space in the day for individual practice, study, or attending to personal needs. For you, tonight, that need is simple and humble. You return to your small, Spartan cell. The light inside is dim, filtering softly through the paper window. You sit on the edge of your hard plank bed, and from a small wooden box, you take out your sewing kit. It's a simple roll of cloth containing a few sharp needles, a thimble, and spools of coarse thread in shades of ochre and brown. You pick up the robe you wear for daily work, laying it across your lap. You examine it in the fading light. It is a garment of constant use and, therefore, constant wear. You find what you were looking for at the cuff of the right sleeve. The fabric has begun to fray. The seam is threatening to come undone. This is your task for the next arm mending. You thread a needle, your eyes squinting in the dim light. The thread is thick and strong. You make a small, neat knot at the end and begin to work. You push the needle through the tough fabric, pulling the thread taut. You create a line of small, even stitches, reinforcing the weak seam. The work is slow and requires concentration, but it's a different kind of focus than the intellectual rigor of debate or the total sensory awareness of meditation. This is a gentle, domestic concentration. Your hands, which have copied sacred texts and pulled weeds from the earth, are now engaged in an act of simple care and maintenance. Each stitch is a small victory against decay, a tiny protest against the forces of entropy. You are not just fixing a piece of clothing, you are extending its life. You are practicing frugality and non-minus waste, core values of the monastic path, in a world outside these walls that values the new and the novel. You are finding value in the old, the worn, and the repaired. Your robe, with its many patches and mended seams, becomes a testament to this philosophy. It's a roadmap of your time here, with each repair a memory of a quiet evening spent just like this. This act of mending one's own robe is deeply symbolic. The Buddha himself was said to have repaired his own robes, and the early monastic codes, the Vinaya, contain specific instructions on how robes should be cared for and patched. It was considered an essential skill for a monk. Owning only a few sets of robes meant that maintaining them was not a choice, but a necessity. This brings up a curious, lesser-minus known detail of monastic life, the robe-minus making season. In many monasteries, there was a specific time of year, often after the rainy season retreat, when the entire community would engage in making new robes. Lay supporters would donate bolts of cloth, and the monks would work together to measure, cut, and sew the garments. There was a communal activity, a festival of sewing, that reinforced community bonds and ensured everyone was properly outfitted for the year ahead. Your solitary mending is a small echo of that larger, communal act of creation and care. As you sew, your mind is quiet and calm. The repetitive motion of your hand, the gentle pop of the needle passing through the cloth, becomes a form of meditation in itself. It's a practical, useful activity that leaves no room for grand philosophical speculation or anxious striving. It is simply what it is fixing a sleeve. In this simplicity, there is a profound peace. The historical reality of monastic clothing, however, is, as always, more complex than the simple ideal. While the image of the monk in his humble, thatched robe is powerful, the reality for some was quite different. The Tang Dynasty was the golden age of Buddhism in China, and some monasteries became incredibly wealthy and powerful. Abbots of major state-sponsored temples were often granted luxurious robes of fine silk, sometimes purple, a color reserved for high-ranking officials, as a sign of imperial favor. These were not garments of humility, but symbols of status and political connection. So, while you sit in your cell mending a coarse, earth-stoned robe, somewhere in a grand temple in the capital city of Chang'an, an influential abbot might be carefully folding a shimmering silk garment that was a personal gift from the emperor. The academic debate continues about how widespread this practice was and how it was reconciled with the fundamental Buddhist teaching of renunciation. Was it seen as a corrupting influence, or a necessary part of navigating the complex world of court politics? Your repair is almost finished. You make the last few stitches, securing the thread with a strong, small knot. You snip the end with a small pair of iron scissors. You run your finger over the repaired section. It's not beautiful, but it is strong. It will hold. The sleeve is whole again. You fold the robe carefully and put it away. You have not produced a great work of art, or had a blinding flash of insight. You have simply attended to a small, necessary task. You have brought a little bit of order to your world, pushed back against the inevitable fraying of things for one more day. You look out your window. The last sliver of the sun has disappeared behind the mountains. The sky is now a deep, velvety purple, and the first stars are beginning to appear. The day is ending, but it is not over yet. The deep purple of the sky signals the transition from day to night. A stillness descends upon the monastery, different from the quiet of the afternoon. It's a more personal, introspective quiet, but before the day is fully relinquished to private meditation and sleep, there is one last piece of communal, intellectual engagement. You don't go to the grand Dharma hall. Instead, you and a small, select group of monks are summoned to the abbot's private quarters. This is not a formal lecture for the entire assembly. It is a more intimate and, in some ways, more intimidating event. This is the evening window, or question and answer session. The abbot's room is larger than your cell, but still remarkably simple. There's a sleeping plank, a desk for study laden with scrolls, and a small altar with a single candle burning. The air smells of old books and the faint, sweet scent of the candle's smoke. You and the other chosen monks, perhaps a mix of promising novices and more senior practitioners, take your places on cushions arranged in a semicircle on the floor. The abbot sits before you, not on an elevated platform, but on a simple cushion at the same level, fostering a sense of direct exchange. He sips a cup of hot water, or perhaps a weak, medicinal tea. He studies the faces before him in the flickering candlelight. The atmosphere is relaxed, but there's an undercurrent of tension. This is an oral examination, and you don't know the questions in advance. The purpose of this session is not to test your memorization of sutras. The abbot has heard you chant and has read your copied texts. This is a chanji, a Zen opportunity, a moment to probe the depth of your actual understanding. He wants to see if the day's teachings and practices have taken root, or if they are just floating on the surface of your mind. He turns to the first monk, a young man who is known for his sharp intellect. Hui Jing, the abbot says, his voice soft but clear. This morning, you swept the courtyard. Were you sweeping the dust from the stones, or the dust from your mind? It's a classic Zen style question, a koan in miniature. It's designed to bypass the logical, intellectual mind. Hui Jing, clever as he is, gives a clever answer. Master, he replies, the mind is fundamentally pure. There is no dust upon it. I was just sweeping the stones. The abbot listens, a flicker of something amusement, disappointment in his eyes. He says nothing, just nods slowly, and turns to the next monk. The silence is his commentary. Hui Jing's answer was doctrinally correct, straight from the sixth patriarch's famous poem, but perhaps it was too polished, too much from the head and not enough from the heart. This kind of direct, challenging exchange between master and student is the very heart of the Chan tradition. It's a live, dynamic process of teaching that can't be captured in books. The master uses these pointed questions, and sometimes even shouts soaring on minus verbal gestures, to shock the student out of their habitual patterns of thought. Here's a curious, little minus known detail about these interactions. They were meticulously recorded. After a famous master died, his students would gather all the stories they could remember of his dialogues, his lectures, and his quirky encounters. These would be compiled into books known as Yulu, or recorded sayings. The collections of masters like Mezu Dao Yi or Lingji Yi Zhuan from the Tang and later periods became foundational texts of Zen. So, this intimate, seemingly spontaneous conversation you're having right now might one day be written down, canonized, and studied by monks 1,000 years in the future. You are, potentially, living out a line in a future sacred text. The abbot turns his gaze to you. Your heart gives a little thump. You met with a patron today, he says. He was drowning in a sea of suffering. You spoke to him of impermanence. Did you offer him a raft, or did you just describe the water? The question hangs in the air. It's a sharp one. HES asking if you just spouted philosophy, or if you genuinely helped the man. You take a breath. A clever, intellectual answer like Hui Jing's feels wrong. A simple I tried my best feels inadequate. You search for an honest response, one that comes from your own, genuine experience. Master, you begin, your voice a little shaky. I am not a boat-minus builder. I have no raft to give. I only tried to show him that he already knows how to swim. The abbot holds your gaze for a long moment. His expression is unreadable in the wavering candlelight. Then, he gives a very slight, almost imperceptible nod. It's a nod of acknowledgement, perhaps even approval. He has not praised you, but he has accepted your answer. You feel a wave of relief wash over you. The heterodoxy of these evening QA sessions is, of course, a topic scholars examine closely. Are the recorded sayings that we have today accurate? Verbatim transcripts of these conversations? Or are they idealized, polished versions, edited by later disciples to make the master seem more profound and the dialogues more dramatic? Most historians believe it's a bit of both. The core of the encounter is likely real, but the stories have been shaped and refined through retelling, much like the parables of any great religious teacher. They are not court records. They are teaching tools, designed to convey a spiritual truth rather than a literal, historical fact. The abbot continues around the circle, asking each monk a question tailored to their personality and recent activities. One is asked about his concentration during a chant, another about the taste of the afternoon's tea. Each question is a small, sharp tool designed to bring the monk back to the reality of his own direct experience. The session ends as quietly as it began. The abbot dismisses you with a gesture. You bow and retreat from his room, back into the cool night air. Your mind is buzzing, replaying your answer, replaying the abbot's nod. The brief, intense encounter has sharpened your awareness and left you with much to contemplate as you head into the final, silent hours of the day. You step out from the abbot's quarters into the deep blue of the evening. The moon, perhaps a waxing crescent, has risen, casting a pale, ethereal light over the monastery's courtyards. The sharp, questioning energy of the wind session begins to dissolve as you walk, replaced by a quiet sense of awe at the beauty of the night. This is a time of transition. The day's formal duties are complete. The final communal ritual of the day has yet to begin. In this liminal space between the two, you have a few moments to yourself. You don't return to your cell immediately. Instead, you find yourself drawn to the edge of the main veranda, the long wooden porch that borders the great hall. You lean against a thick, round wooden pillar, its surface worn smooth by time and weather. From this vantage point, you have a panoramic view. You look out over the sweeping, tiled roofs of the lower halls, their elegant curves outlined by the soft moonlight. Beyond them, the monastery walls, and beyond the walls, the vast, silent expanse of the mountains. The peaks are no longer green and brown, but are now immense, black silhouettes against the star-dusted, indigo sky. You watch as the last vestiges of daylight fade from the western horizon. The sunset isn't a fiery, dramatic spectacle. It's a slow, gentle surrender of light to darkness. The world seems to hold its breath. The color drains from the landscape, leaving only shapes and shadows. It is profoundly peaceful. As you stand there, you are a silent witness to one of the most fundamental teachings of your path, laid out on a cosmic scale. Wucheng, or impermanence, the brilliant, powerful sun of midday is gone. The warm, golden light of the afternoon has vanished. This beautiful, tranquil twilight will itself soon yield to the complete darkness of night. Nothing lasts. You observe the shadows. An hour ago, they were long and sharp, stretching eastward from every tree and pillar. Now, as the ambient light of the sky fades and the moonlight takes over, new, softer shadows are born, pointing in the opposite direction. The entire visual reality of the world has inverted itself in the space of an hour. The world you saw this afternoon does not exist anymore. It has been replaced by this new, nocturnal version. This constant flux, this ceaseless transformation, is not a flaw in the world. It is the nature of the world. And your practice is teaching you not to cling to any particular phase of it. You pull your robe a little tighter around your shoulders. The evening air is growing cold, a chill that creeps up from the stone foundations of the hall. The warmth of the day is a memory. This, too, is a lesson. Here's a small, poetic detail about this moment in a monastery. These institutions were often built with great care, according to the principles of Feng Shui, the Chinese art of geomancy, the placement of halls, the orientation of gates, the view of distant mountains and nearby streams, all work carefully considered to harmonize the man-made environment with the natural flow of cosmic energy, or qi. So the perfect, serene view you are enjoying right now is likely not an accident. It was engineered by the monastery's founders to be a source of inspiration and a teaching tool, a constant, silent sermon in landscape architecture. As you stand there, lost in contemplation, you are seeing the world through a lens that is both aesthetic and deeply philosophical. The beauty of the scene is not just pretty, it's meaningful. It's a direct, sensory experience of the truths you study in the sutras and debate in the halls. The academic interpretation of this deep connection to nature within Chan Buddhism is fascinating. Some scholars argue that it was heavily influenced by Taoism, a native Chinese philosophy that venerates nature and preaches harmony with the Tao, the natural way of the universe. While Buddhism originated in India, a land with a very different landscape and climate, it was transformed when it came to China. The Chinese love of mountains, rivers, and landscape painting seeped into its expression of Buddhist ideas. The historical debate isn't about if this influence happened, but to what degree. Was Chan Buddhism a true synthesis of Indian Buddhist thought and Chinese Taoist sensibility, or was it fundamentally Buddhist, merely using the language of nature as a convenient metaphor? When you look at the mountains and feel a sense of profound peace and connection, are you feeling a Buddhist truth or a Taoist one? Or have they, by this point in the Tang Dynasty, become impossible to separate? The last sliver of orange on the horizon is gone. The world is now rendered in a monochrome palette of black, gray, and silver. The stars, which were just beginning to appear, now blanket the sky in their thousands, brighter and clearer than you could ever imagine in a world with artificial light. The Milky Way is a luminous, shimmering river stretching from one end of the sky to the other. You are a tiny, temporary figure standing in the face of this immense, timeless spectacle. The worries of the patron, the logical knots of the debate, the ache in your back from weeding all of it seems to shrink and scale, put into its proper perspective by the silent, majestic turning of the heavens. Then a sound breaks the silence. Not a bell this time. It is the deep, resonant, and mournful sound of a massive drum. Dung, dung, dung. It's the evening drum. The day is officially over. It is time for the final duty. The sound of the evening drum pulls you from your reverie on the veranda. As you turn and head back towards the monk's quarters, a familiar sensation, which had been a quiet background note, now makes itself known more insistently. It's the feeling of emptiness in your stomach. It is the arrival of true, undeniable hunger. The nourishing meal you had at noon is now a distant memory. Its energy fully expended by an afternoon of physical labor, intense study, and focused meditation. Your body, a creature of habit and need, is sending its primal, unmistakable signal it requires more fuel. This is a critical moment in your daily practice, a subtle but powerful test of your discipline. You walk past the kitchens. They are dark and silent. The fires banked for the night. The delicious smells of the midday meal have been replaced by the cold, clean scent of scrubbed countertops and stone floors. There is no food to be had. The rule of Ji-Yu-O-Bi-Yushi no eating past noon is now in full effect, and its reality is no longer a philosophical concept, but a physical sensation. You feel a pang of desire, not just for food, but for the comfort that comes with it. The simple, satisfying feeling of a full stomach, the warmth, the sense of security. You imagine a hot bowl of rice porridge, maybe with a little ginger. The thought is so vivid you can almost taste it. This is the mind's rebellion, its attempt to cling to a desired sensation. Your training is to simply observe this. You don't suppress the thought, nor do you indulge it by letting it spiral into a fantasy. You acknowledge it. The thought of porridge has arisen. You acknowledge the physical sensation. This is the feeling of hunger. You observe it without judgment, as you would observe a cloud passing in the sky. It is a sensation, a thought. It is not you. You arrive back in the corridor of your dormitory wing. Before returning to your cell, you stop at a small station where a large, insulated clay pot sits. A single candle flickers beside it. This is the evening's only permitted concession to your hunger and the growing cold. They junior monk, tasked with evening duties, is there to serve you. You hold out a simple ceramic cup, and he uses a wooden ladle to pour you a measure of hot liquid. It's not tea, which contains caffeine and might interfere with sleep or evening meditation. It's not a rich, sugary medicinal juice. It is, most likely, clean hot water, or perhaps, if the monastery is a bit more lenient, it might be tang, the starchy water left over from rinsing rice, or a very thin broth flavored with a bit of ginger or a dried date. It is warm, comforting, but contains virtually no calories. You take the cup in both hands, feeling the warmth seep into your cold fingers. You drink it slowly, mindfully. The warmth spreads from your mouth down into your stomach, momentarily soothing the ache of emptiness. It's a small, simple comfort, but in the context of your disciplined life, it feels like a luxury. It's not a meal, but it's a gesture of care, a small kindness the community offers to help you through the long fast of the night. This practice of allowing certain liquids in the evening is the result of centuries of practical experience and theological debate. The original rules laid down by the Buddha were for monks in the tropical climate of India. When Buddhism spread to the colder, harsher climates of Central Asia and China, adjustments had to be made. A complete fast from noon onwards during a cold winter night was not just difficult, it could be dangerous. This led to the practical compromise of allowing non-food items. Here's a curious, little known detail. The specific list of what was permissible in the evening could be surprisingly detailed. The Vinaya texts, the monastic rulebooks, contain long, elaborate discussions on this topic. They list various types of fruit juices that were allowed if strained, and from a fruit smaller than a fist, types of sugars that were considered medicinal like rock sugar or honey, and even specific infusions of herbs. The level of detail is almost legalistic, showing how seriously the monks took the rule, and how carefully they navigated the line between upholding the spirit of the law and meeting the practical needs of the body. The historical debate among scholars often revolves around how these allowances were put into practice. In a strict, ascetic monastery on a remote mountain, your cup of hot water would be the norm, but in a more urban, cosmopolitan temple with wealthy patrons, could the evening medicine have become a more substantial, nourishing drink? Some texts hint at monks consuming thick, sweet ginger decoctions or rich almond milks. Is this a sign of laxity and corruption, or a sensible adaptation to local conditions and diet? It remains a point of scholarly contention, highlighting the constant tension between the ideal and the real. You finish your cup of warm water. The gnawing emptiness in your stomach has subsided into a dull, manageable ache. You have met the craving not by feeding it, but by acknowledging it and offering it as simple, harmless comfort. It's another small victory in the daily practice of mastering the mind. You hand your cup back to the novice, bow slightly, and continue down the dark corridor to your cell. The final communal activity of the day awaits, and you will face it not with a full stomach, but with a clear, calm mind. unburdened by the work of digestion, sharpened by the slight edge of hunger. The drum has sounded. The warmth has been taken. It is time for the final prayers. The deep, resonant thud of the evening drum continues its slow, steady beat, calling the community together one last time. You leave your cell, joining the now Midas familiar silent procession of ochre robes. The destination is the same as it was in the pre-minus dawn blackness, the great hall. The journey feels different now. In the morning, you are moving from the deep mystery of sleep into the day's activity. Now, you are moving from the day's activity into the deep mystery of the night. The moonlight filters through the wooden latticework of the covered walkways, creating shifting patterns of light and shadow on the stone path. The air is cold and still. You enter the great hall, slipping off your shoes at the door. The scene inside is a mirror or image of the morning service. The same candles are lit